going like angry birds. I'm reaching for a place where my voice would ever reach. Can you hear my cry? Reaching for the stars above the sky. My voice never sound like you. 'Cause I can only cry for her one more night. For one more night. Yeah. For one more night. Yeah. Or I can only cry for her. At the hub we spoke about our future and the dreams to come. When the pieces we couldn't mistake count. We are like birds from the event God can deny. We are a mismatch by on a weekend when he was in the mood of making diamonds and many things that I like. And then to the angels who will sing that time. Can you hear my crying eyes? Reaching for the stars above the skies. My voice never sound like it used to. Is I can only cry for her. Can you hear my crying eyes? Reaching for the stars above the skies. My voice will never sound like it used to. 'Cause I can only cry for one more night. Oh, for one more night. Yeah. Oh, for one more night. Yeah. Or I can only cry for one more night. Oh, one more night. Yeah. Oh, oh, one more night. I can only cry for one more night. Or I can only cry for one more night.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon and making some time to come and listen to the incredible Miss Elona Ndlovu. Today, she's going to be talking about boardroom skills for the future. So without further ado, I'm going to now hand over to Miss Elona. Welcome.
Thank you, Nabila. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. So good afternoon, everybody in the room. I'm going to assume we have women in the room. Good afternoon to the women in the room and those who are joining us from the live stream. I'm very glad to be talking to you this afternoon. My name is Elona Ndlovu. I run a coaching practice called Bizpreneur. Today, we will be speaking about boardroom skills for the future. I just wanted to share my presentation and perhaps to share a little bit about myself as an introduction. So my organization provides coaching, mentoring, and training for leaders. And we happen to have more women clients than men. So I feel at home to be asked to present this topic. I'm finalizing my PhD at the Wits Business School, focusing on business coaching and entrepreneurship. I have coached in various organizations across sub-Saharan Africa, and this is where I coach a lot of women who sit on boards, or those who aspire to sit on boards. So my talk today is not only for people who already are sitting on boards, and I think what we will speak about speaks through developing your career from middle management onwards. So I will get started. Nabila?
Yes.
May I ask the women that are in the room, is it fine that we become interactive from the beginning?
Of course, 100%. It's your
All right,
master.
great.
Okay.
Ladies in the room, may I just ask, you have the advantage because you are here with me. So may I just ask at what stage in your careers you are? If you don't feel comfortable speaking, you can just type it. What stage in your career are you and what are you looking to get out of this webinar? I'd like us to, cover that for the next few minutes so that it is useful, as useful as possible for everybody in the room, because you have given up your time. Nana, would you like to start?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Elona. Thank you for the opportunity. Currently, I would say I am a new business owner, starting a new business, actually a multiple of businesses currently. So both in consulting, where I help organizations to design their talent acquisition strategies. I do psychometric assessment. I also do coaching, both business and executive coaching. I am also into the food industry, where I sell some of the South Africans' traditional food. So it's not just any food, but it's specifically to the South African traditional food.
Okay.
So that
so
is
what
where
would you like to get out of this webinar?
So what I'd like to get out of this webinar, it's more basically, how can I help some of my clients to prepare themselves better for engagement into the boardroom? And when we're building talent acquisition strategies, how can I help the clients to better build or to acquire talent that will be ready for boardroom engagements into the future?
Okay, great. I realize I picked on Nana, so I don't want to do that with everybody else. Is there anybody else who would like to share what career stage are you at and what would you like to get out of this workshop? And you can also use the chat. But if you don't have answers right now, as we go on, please can we... Orishoketse, go ahead.
Good. I almost said good morning. Goodness. Where did the day go? Good afternoon, ladies. Good afternoon, Elona and the host, and thank you so much for the session. My name is Reshoketse Chilwane. I'm finance professional in the nonprofit space, but currently full-time employed as the head of finance for the Black Management Forum, but also do consulting work for non-profit organizations, and that's where my passion lies in terms of capacity building for the non-profits, and also that just ensuring that they have the necessary support to run the organization and actually achieve their objective as the third sector. And I've recently joined another organization as a board member. And what I'm really hoping to get out of the session is just firstly to equip myself as to be able to serve as a board member, but also to just equip my client in during our session and how they can build their board and the expectations and those kind of things. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else before I get started? Tuli, your camera is on. Do you want to speak? Okay, it's off. All right. So thank you for the introductions, and I'm sure I'll get to interact with everybody else as we go on. So this sounds very cliche, but I actually really believe in this, that we cannot flourish if we don't take advantage of the power that women have, the potential and the skills of the women. I remember engaging with some international funders who were based in the US, and this gentleman had been doing it for years. And he said to me, you know, the lessons I've learned, and no offense to the African men, this is not me, I'm quoting. If you want to get partners that will actually implement and do the work, get to an African community and partner with the women. And his observation was that the men will talk and talk and talk, but the women will act. So I really found that very interesting, because that has become a business strategy for somebody. So if we as ladies in Africa are not taking advantage of the natural skill that we apparently have of being implementers, it is very worrying. And this is a general statement, because we are in Women's Month. We need to remind ourselves that we have the potential that will lift more than just ourselves, but women are multipliers in communities. Thank you, Tobile. She's written her introduction. So we have Business Women Association in South Africa. I'm not sure how many of you are members, but the latest stat on their website, it says only 26 JSE listed companies consistently had a 25% plus female board, right? And then 45 had no female directors at all. So I'm not sure if the call for women directors is being made and we are not answering, or the call is just not there. So today I'm going to be speaking about the skills, boardroom skills for the future for women. And one of them is actually coming from the entrepreneurship space. We need to be looking for opportunities before waiting for opportunities to come our way. So while we can say that the 45 out of 277 companies had no female directors at all, are we networking enough as women in South Africa? Are we putting ourselves out there? Are we saying, hey, I have the skill and I can contribute? Or do they not know of your profile when it's time to appoint a new board member? So that is something to reflect on, to say, how is your professional brand and how are you managing yourself as a professional brand? And if someone was sitting somewhere and considering getting a female board member, would your name come up? if you meet that skill set. And if your name wouldn't come up, is it because you're not putting your name out there and you're waiting for opportunities to apply? So that is something to consider. It looks like my screen is frozen. Nabila, can you still hear me?
I can still hear you and see your screen.
Oh, okay, not a problem.
But it's not changing.
It's not changing. Okay, let me unshare.
Which one?
Hi, apologies. I think I had a drop in network. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So I was speaking about managing your professional brand. And I'd like us to reflect on if a certain organization was hiring for an additional female board member, would your name come up if you met the skill set? Would the people in the room know of you, even if they don't know you personally? And if they don't, is there potential or opportunity for you to brand and market your professional profile a bit more intentionally towards that board position, that director position that you have, that you desire? And how do you do that? Let's think about what is on a profile for my name. Oh, okay, sorry. So what is it that is the requirement for the boards? What have you seen in the adverts? And is there something that you can do on your own profile to prepare yourself for going there? So one of the main things is even knowing what is in the environment, right? We know that there's gender biases. They don't start in the boardroom environment. They start very early on in our careers. And I think if we were to sit and even change the topic to gender biases in the workplace, we would be talking longer than the time allocated. So we know about stereotyping. We know that there is maternal biases, that, oh my gosh, but this one's going to get pregnant and all of those things. We know those things and we work through them. Sometimes some people don't go through it, some people experience it. However, that cannot be the reason that you hold yourself back from developing your skills in order to access more board positions, right? And it is not only up to women to address the gender biases. We know it needs to be an intentional and organization-wide, also society-wide. And I'm glad we're celebrating Women's Month and doing a lot of awareness campaigns around that. But at an individual level, it is important to make a decision that, yes, the gender biases are there. However, there is still room for me in the boardrooms, in the positions that will lead me to the boardrooms. So let the gender biases not come from yourself, but be something that you experience if you must, but not to have biases and stereotypes that you do internally. And sometimes it is not very clear. Sometimes it is the voice we have internally that is limiting us to say, oh my gosh, but there's no women in that board. And how's it going to be if I'm the only woman or I'm the first woman? It is important that as you ready yourself or as you prepare yourself for meetings, that the story and the voice that you tell yourself is positive and is confident, because that comes through when you experience other people. So one of the main skills is effective communication. We know that this is important from early in the career, but extremely important the higher you go, especially at director level. It is important that the great ideas that you carry are actually heard and that they actually travel across to clients, to fellow board members and all the stakeholders. There is no use that we sit on this brilliance, but we are not able to deliver it, or we cannot be heard because of how we package it. So the packaging of your message, packaging of your skill, packaging of your brilliance needs to be great. And that's why I've called it your professional brand. It starts off with how do you package yourself in the written communication, in the spoken communication, in just your portfolio. How do people experience you? And how do you communicate that which, the greatness that sits within you? So I've written a few that it's important that you communicate confidently. And sometimes that comes with preparation. It is common that people will doubt themselves before they go for a meeting, before they go for a negotiation. Some of that comes from low preparation. So it's important to prepare. It's important to have your facts in order. It's important to tell yourself that I need to speak clearly, and you observe the people that you're speaking to. If the feedback you keep getting is, I'm not getting you, or if you keep seeing that the people around you, your message is not landing, it's important to start to observe what is it that is not clear about my communication, and perhaps get a mentor, a coach, or a trusted colleague to give you feedback on at what point is your communication not clear. Mbui, are you speaking? Okay, no problem. It's also important to listen as well as you speak, because there's no point to speak so well, but you don't take back the feedback. So it's important to speak and listen clearly, use your body language correctly, and that takes self-awareness. Address when people interrupt you when you speak, because that is something that a lot of women experience, that they feel their male counterparts tend to talk over them, or I wish I had a very strong voice because when I speak, the loudest man in the voice in the room is who is heard. Address those interruptions, but also build allies in that board. Build one-on-one relationships with your board members so you can understand their strengths and their weaknesses. That is something that even AI cannot take away from you. And this presentation today is speaking to skills for the future. Artificial intelligence is here and it's not going anywhere. We need to capitalize on those human skills that cannot be replicated yet by robots. You need to speak with authority. You've been positioned as an expert, and that is why you sit on the board that you sit in. So you need to not be tentative about the skills and the opinions that you give. Get your facts in order, use data and evidence, and continue to take your space as an expert. Collaborate with different people on the board. Also speak from the heart. Sometimes the way you narrate something can paint a full picture. Sometimes you are speaking about risk, but perhaps you're speaking to a room of people who don't really understand what you're saying. So perhaps you can use a story, paint a picture of an organization where that consequence has happened, and you will quickly see how easily you can change people's minds. And feedback is very important. Communication is two-way, three-way, or whatever, but you need to close the loop by seeing what is the feedback. You might be speaking, but the feedback might be through body language, through nods, through shocked faces, through smiling faces. Take that feedback in, because that is how you know whether you're getting to your audience or not, whether your fellow board members are understanding what you're presenting or what point you're trying to make. I'm going to move. I will periodically check the chat. But Nabila, if there is something in the chat that I haven't seen, please let me know.
Sure. No problem.
Thank you. So it's important to be strategic in how you make decisions, strategic and also inclusive. Your contributions cannot be contributions that serve one business unit or that serve one area. It cannot be, you cannot build allies in a board or with stakeholders if your view is myopic and it is, I'm an HR director, I'm here to just look after HR. I don't care what finance says, I don't care what marketing says, I'm just looking after my area. That is what a lot of professionals tend to do, and it's not gender specific. I'm not going to say a lot of women. That's what a lot of professionals tend to do, and you find that you quickly lose support. So you need to look at strategically making decisions that make sense for the entity, whether they are directly impacting your area or not. Engage in the other discussions, whether they are impacting your area or not, because this is the same audience and engagement that you desire from your colleagues when it is things that impact you. So when I speak of diversity, incorporate diversity in decision-making, I'm talking about diversity in thought, diversity in demography, but the diversity in thought is very important. You must not only just create your allies with those that think like you. Sometimes create your allies with the person that argues with you the most in the meetings, meet with them before the meeting and see, because most times those arguments or questions are not personal. It is actually to get the engagement going and get you thinking more critically. So imagine if that person was your ally, and as you prepare your presentation and you've already covered their concerns before you go into the broader space, then you've got a more robust opinion or a more robust presentation to deliver. So it's important that we depersonalize the feedback we get or the pushback we get, because when you depersonalize it, you recognize that the task actually gets better and improved. Sometimes when you take a few days and you realize actually that was actually helpful feedback. Perhaps it wasn't delivered well, or perhaps I wasn't in a great space to receive the feedback, but the feedback actually improves the product, or it improves what I'm trying to pitch. So it's always important to be self-aware in the moment before you take feedback personally in a negative way, that can this improve my position? Can it improve my submission and my presentation? So depersonalize it with the mind of that I am having inclusive decision-making, which includes diversity of thought. So people that think like you are great as friends, but not even that. People that think of you like you, do they teach you anything new? Because you already know that. You already think that. So sometimes make it a habit to engage with people that think differently, and you will find that what you are developing or what you're pitching and presenting, it broadens because you have brought different mindset into it. So one of the things that I think it's really obvious is that sometimes in boards, there is board jargon that it is important that you get yourself familiar with it. I laughed the other day, I spoke to my IT provider and I used an acronym POE. In my mind, I was speaking of a portfolio of evidence, and he said about 12 hours later, he came back to me and he says, that means power over Ethernet, right? And obviously communication didn't work well on that day because we were both talking about different things. So familiarize yourself with the industry, familiarize yourself with the jargon of that organization or the specific position you're in, because it's important so that you don't keep asking, what do we mean by SWOT? What do we mean in this industry by this? Try and get yourself over and familiar with all the jargon that is used there, because you have come as an expert and an expert will do their homework and understand what's happening in the organization. Yes, they'll give you board packs. Yes, they'll give you preparation, but there are things which have become an internal lingo because it is industry language or organizational language that you need to take your time to get to understand, because that will be helpful for you. Also, I tend to say that every board member should have a skill to understand risk. What is the risk of that which I'm presenting? What is the risk of that which my peer is presenting? And what can we do to mitigate that risk? If you are to present something that is perpetually positive without any engagement with what's the risk, that is something that tells you that your presentation is not ready, your submission is not ready. You need to understand what could possibly go wrong and how can we mitigate it. So at that executive level, it should almost come naturally that you understand the risks associated with that which you're proposing or supporting in somebody else's presentation. What are the ethical issues associated with that which I'm about to sanction as a board member? What am I voting for? What are the ethical implications? And that is so important because sometimes the meetings are so long, but you've got responsibilities where it comes to governance. So as an individual, it's important to continuously understand the risk, understand the ethical implications, and before you even vote, understand those things and be able to engage in discussions that speak to risk, mitigation of risk, and understanding the ethics and the integrity. Because beyond that board that you're sitting in, you still have a career and a reputation to uphold. So it is very important to not forget that part about your own personal brand as you sanction certain things in the board in which you sit. I want to pause for any questions or comments. Are we still following? Anyone who has a question? All good, thumbs up. Hey, fine. All right, I'm going to move on. There's nothing in the chat, right? Great. Awesome. So we cannot have solutions for the future by doing what we've been doing in the past. I want to share a great book. It's on my bookshelf. I want to read it properly. What got you here will not get you there. So we cannot use yesterday's solution for tomorrow. It is important that you have almost an inbuilt need for innovation. So the business landscape is changing. Rishoketso shared she's in the NPO space. That is also changing. So adaptability is one of the key skills for the future. You need to be able to constantly empty your cup and fill it with new things, and not be afraid that I'm letting go of this is how I've always done it. And what is this that I'm stepping into? Be comfortable to step into the unfamiliar, navigate things that are not so concrete for you. And remember, I said it's important to have an entrepreneurial spirit. And this means that you should be able to identify and seize opportunities. Sometimes even before your peers even understand why would she be doing this? Why would she be even thinking of going on to boards and things like that? So it is important that as a personal habit and a culture, start to think of how can I improve my adaptability? What are the things that I'm holding on to that perhaps are not serving me for the future? And ChatGPT has rocked many industries, and I think the biggest industry that has been rocked has been academia, because suddenly students have a bot that can answer your assignments. So does that mean that that industry is now obsolete? I don't know. I don't think so. But many industries have gone obsolete because of lack of adaptability to change and innovation. So it's important at an individual level to train yourself to be able to grow in different environments, to be able to thrive in different environments. And when the environment doesn't serve you anymore, to be able to recreate yourself and move to an environment in which you're growing. So it's important to be resilient, seize and identify opportunities. I'm bringing that up again because you cannot move if you have not trained yourself to say, where is the gap and how can I be the best solution for that gap? It's so important. So, and that means you need to be continuously reflecting on yourself, your role in your profession, and what you want your future role to be. So what you're doing now, is it contributing to the future that you're trying to build? Or is there a gap? Is it just time filling and it's not going to help you to get to the destination that you want to go? Those are questions that we need to be constantly asking ourselves. So building a culture of innovation, it's important to think as women, what can we do? You guys are middle management and up, but we need to be thinking of what role modeling am I doing for those who are still upcoming? How can you amplify what you're doing as a woman, perhaps with other women or for other women? There's a lot of great things that people are doing, but not a lot of people know about it because it is not amplified. It is not out there. And also when we speak about inclusive leadership, like I said in the previous slide, having an inclusive mindset is not just at the gender level, at the demographic level, but it is also in terms of thought leadership. How inclusive are you of different opinions, of different ways of work, of different ways of thinking? And if you could challenge yourself to say, if I can incorporate this, this is going to actually multiply, or this is actually going to speak to more groups of people than what I had started off with. It's important, I think some of you or most of you spoke about having mentors or mentoring others. It's important to continue to get a mentor yourself, even though you're mentoring others, especially if you're looking at growing into a role a little bit higher with where you are. Approach your mentors. Be clear about what do you want from your mentors, because most times they are busy. What is it that you've identified in that person that you would like to leverage on or learn from? And what are you expecting from them? How much time are you expecting from them? And what are you committing to do? Be clear in that, because we've already talked about, sorry, I'm checking my time. We've already talked about effective communication. So as you try and grow your network and find a mentor, an ally, or a sponsor, it's important to be clear about why do you need that specific person to mentor you, and what is it that you've seen them do that you would like to develop, because it makes it easy instead of, I would like you to mentor me. Then it's not clear what you're looking for. Don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. Do things a little bit differently. 5 + 4 is 9, 6 + 3 is 9, 8 + 1 is 9. And that is being adaptable and developing a culture of innovation. So as you lead and you also get led, allow people to think the way they think, as long as the solution is not high risk, as long as the solution is what you need. Being a micromanaging manager makes for a difficult board member, because it means it's difficult for you to adapt and allow people to think the way they think. And at that level, you have no choice but to accept that your peers will think differently and will bring different things to the table. That is a reflection of that. It is important for you to start to develop that skill of accommodating different mindsets and different thought leadership. So one of the things that I cannot end this presentation without covering is the issue of well-being. So in as much as we are on a journey of growing as board members or future board members, it is important to know that it shouldn't start only when you crash. Start to think about, how am I looking after my well-being as I grow? So it's also, if you are a leader that is aware of the importance of well-being, it will improve your own performance, but also probably fall through to your, filter through to your peers, filter through to the teams that you lead, and that is super important. As we have seen that many jobs are no longer future fit. What is the point of working so hard that you kill yourself and you lose your well-being? Without your well-being, you cannot reinvent yourself. You cannot even be adaptable and move to different spaces. So this is an important skill, personal management skill, that you need to look after your well-being, because without it, that is a foundation of any career jumps or transitions or tangents that you take. You need to be well and whole. So it's important that you have that at the back or front of your mind, that you know that I need to look after myself in order for me to do whatever it is that I envision in my career. So, and there are many things that are barriers for women to achieve well-being, which start off with long working hours, multiple responsibilities like an octopus, and then constant connectivity. We have our work emails on the phone. We can read our board pack while we are in bed, so we're not actually sleeping. Or time pressures. Workplace culture we are in the pressure cooker, and that's what shows that you're a good board member. Perhaps conflict between roles, if you're a consultant and you're working for many different people or in multiple boards, and then you're not actually structuring yourself correctly, then you have conflict between different roles. Then your health can start to make noise. It's important to think about personal needs. And then life is unpredictable, so you can encounter emergencies. However, one of the biggest ones is the lack of boundaries. It's important to recognize that you should create boundaries between your personal well-being and work. If we actually work correctly, it is possible to reduce the amount of pressure you're under through building boundaries. And a lot of people will disagree until they started to. I've worked with quite a few women in boards who had a total lack of boundaries because it was important for them to say yes, yes, yes to everything, as opposed to actually holding people to account to say, since you've brought this to me on the morning of the board meeting, this cannot serve in today's meeting. I cannot have a meaningful solution for you today, for example. Many women are afraid to assert themselves in that way, especially if you're new in the board, but then you are creating a culture of last minute work and pressure. And sometimes it is a trap to ensure that you make mistakes. So it's important to identify what boundaries do I need to put in place, and how can I enforce those boundaries. So it's always all well and good to think about the boundaries, but what strategies are going to use to enforce the boundaries and keep them in place. Any questions, comments at this stage? I need to hydrate. Now we're talking about well-being. Anyone have questions? Anyone find it easy to enforce boundaries in boards, in work, in life in general? Is this something you've mastered? Risho Ketse?
Hi, Elona. I think in terms of boundaries for me, I used to be one of those people who work around like throughout the day, at night and everything. But one of the things that I've really learned to do this year is one, have separate WhatsApp group for my personal people that they can always reach me, and also the one that is for work and any other not immediate that I know once from 5 o'clock, I don't attend to that WhatsApp line. Mm-hmm. And also one of the things that I have in place, and my colleagues at the office know, is that once I leave the office or once it hits 5 o'clock, I don't open emails up until the following day after 8 or after 9 when I get to the office. So because I think most of my high stress levels will come from work emails colleagues.
After hours work emails.
After hours work emails, because it also comes to that agents, oh, I need to attend to this. Okay, let me just do it first. Let me just do this. Let me do that. So I think that one is one thing that I've fully mastered now. I know very well once I can work on my own pace, but I will definitely do not open emails. And if I feel that there is an agent email I need to send, I will just go offline, type it out and leave it on draft and go back online and work. Then I know it will be sent the following day when I get to the office or when I start my work. So I think that has been quite helpful. And also I've also just practicing to also do away with my phone from 8 o'clock. And also that will give me just enough time to read a 2-page of a book or just spend some time for myself as well. Yeah. And yeah, it's still a work in progress on that. But one thing I can confidently say I've mastered this year, definitely not check emails after work hours over the weekend. It doesn't, even if I happen to be in there and I can see they're coming in, so I've grown that backbone to just ignore up until Monday morning. Oh yeah. So yeah, I think that's one thing that has really worked for me. And also, and because I've also just communicated that to my colleagues, there is zero expectation that when you send me an email on Friday night or over the weekend, you're gonna get a response over the weekend or first thing Monday morning. No, first thing Monday morning, I'm still catching up. So you're likely to get a response depending on the agents of the matter, maybe as the day progresses or maybe in the afternoon. So also just managing expectations from our people, be it socially or also at a professional level, that is quite important. When we have communicated such boundaries and the expectation becomes more manageable. I think that has been my experience. Thank you.
I love that. So you're not only setting the boundaries, but you're also managing the expectations. Do you feel guilty at all over the weekend when you don't reply?
Not anymore.
Okay, all right. Because
I used to.
I
used to, but no, not anymore. It actually makes me feel good. I feel like I'm sort of in control of my life, and now, like, I feel like I have control of my life, that I don't just live for work. Then I know that weekends are time with family and or attend to other activities pertaining to myself. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So lack of boundaries and developing boundaries also requires us to develop proper time management. So if you're not willing to do the work at the time that you should be doing the work, you don't have the luxury to say, I'm not going to do it after hours. So it's important to use your work time very efficiently and ensure that there is no problem with your delivery. So that's the double-edged sword that sometimes we need to consider. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love it. And I love that you're over the guilt as well. And somebody in the chat says, I think it's really hard to enforce boundaries. So we can always think of the boundaries. Somebody I was coaching said it's more difficult to enforce these boundaries personally than in the workplace. So in the workplace, it is almost okay, like Rishoketsu has said, that I can say no emails, but she says somehow the people in her personal life make her feel guilty about needing time alone, for example. So remember, as a woman, there's so much expectation and so much dependency on your nurturing side, or people just wanting to be with you, that sometimes it is difficult for you, or you feel bad to say, actually, I don't have capacity to listen to you rant or something like that. Tuli says she's still yet to learn how to set boundaries. That is a very, very important skill, and you probably are not alone, but it is a very useful one. It will improve your well-being and your focus when you set boundaries. So one of the things that happens when we don't look after our well-being, we can be burnt out. When you start to have a general dissatisfaction or disinterest with things that would have excited you before, you're exhausted. your performance goes down, or your health. Every week you've got a cold, and the next you've got another thing and another thing and another thing. It's important to start to look at what is my body communicating with me. If my memory is not that great, I've got mental fog, or I'm struggling to sleep, or any of those kind of things, it's important to check in with yourself to say, what am I missing in terms of looking after myself, as I can see it's impacting me in various ways. There's a question, how much does the issue of setting boundaries, how is it affected by the societal expectation? Okay, so women are expected to be submissive, but also you are saying you need to set boundaries. So in your personal space, we also need to remember that being submissive doesn't mean that you are neglecting yourself. You need to be well and present to even engage in those personal relationships. So if you look at it as like setting a boundary that I need to look after myself in order to be present for everybody else, that's a starting point. So it's not, setting boundaries is not about rejecting people, but setting boundaries is about being aware of what you need in a space and when, in order for you to be at your optimum. Nana, I hope you answered.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so some of the ways to maintain your well-being: learn to say no, seek support, prioritize your self-care, like I already said. Set boundaries, I keep saying that. Maybe practice mindfulness in the way that best works for you. Stay active, sleep enough. The older you get, when you realize that I'm not 20 anymore, I'm not 15 anymore, your body will tell you you need more sleep. You need to have good nutrition, stay hydrated. Don't isolate yourself socially. And also unplug. Like Princess spoke about that. She does spend time away from her phone. Some of the ways that we get overstimulated and even struggle to contribute to anything productively is that we are always connected. We're always connected to the news. We're always connected to social media. We're always connected to so many people's opinions that there's so much noise that we bring into our space. So it's important to unplug regularly, especially if you're preparing for those important meetings. You cannot do well when you've got brain fog. You cannot do well when you're feeling depleted. So it's important to think about the timing of when am I going to unplug, and how important is what I'm preparing for. You know, can I have my WhatsApp switched off? What is more important right now? And start to train yourself in terms of self-discipline and being able to switch off from certain media. So one more important thing, a skill for the future, is continuous learning, right? The degree that you got in 2001 or whatever is probably obsolete. It's probably not exactly what you use to be optimum in your work. It is the things you've learned along the way. Yes, it's on your profile, it is on your CV, but it is through continuous learning that you can be useful in the board. You need to know what's happening in the industry. You need to, agility as an individual is very important. So you need to know what's happening in the industry, what's happening in the business market, what's happening within the environment of this business that we're trying to grow as a board. Read the news for that purpose, to say, actually, I just saw something on the news and that impacts one of my organizations, and I need to actually engage on what's our response to that, because that's a risk that's coming our way. However, if you are not interested in learning or developing yourself constantly, that is something that you could be missing. So it's important to start to identify what are the or what are the good sources of information for my field or the field of the organization where I sit on the board. So you might be working in the one field and the board in which you want to serve is in another field. That's not impossible. You can actually do a skill transfer, but you also have to know that there's a little bit of extra reading or extra awareness that you will need on your journey. And that will be through continuous learning. You can reinvent yourself in many different industries, but if you're not interested in continuous learning, then that becomes a problem. So I'm not saying get new degrees or anything like that, but it is more around what new information can you process and how can you contribute? How can you process new information to build your thought leadership? So today I'm not going to tell you in what form you must practice continuous learning. It could be a professional course, it could be networking, it could be actual formal academic degrees. You know at what level you're at, and you will need to choose the appropriate level. Excuse me. Sorry. So you will need to choose appropriate ways that suit a journey of continuous learning that will contribute and balance your experience and your contribution that you have at the moment. So I have a few suggestions on ways of engaging in continuous learning. Be intentional about it, and part of that intentional form is allocating enough time for it. So it's all well and good to register for courses, but if you don't have time for it, then that's not actually, if you're not present for it. Before you register for courses, a mindset of continuous learning goes a long way. Being able to be open to different opinions, to your assumptions being challenged, challenge your own assumptions, right? Staying informed, networking, look what's online, what's in the news, not just for the gossip, but for the lessons that are there. It's important to engage in reflective practice. It's important to engage in observing other people and understanding human behavior so that you can capitalize on your engagement as a fellow board member. If you don't know that person A is reflective, therefore I need to give them information in advance before I try and bombard them to make a decision immediately. Those are the ways that we can trip up. Or person A needs facts, figures, numbers, and if I don't have that, they'll rubbish my presentation. Person B does not want too much detail because they get bored, so I need to make it succinct, but if they ask for the detail, I need to know it. Those are things that are so important. You need to understand your audience in those meetings so that you can actually present something that is balanced enough and that's balanced enough for acceptance. Attend conferences, attend industry-specific conferences, get feedback, assess yourself, get feedback from other people, adapt from the feedback, have experiential learning. So as you observe yourself, you'll say, you know, when I started in this role, when I started there, this was what is it that I struggled with and how am I going to develop myself in that specific skill in order that a year or 6 months into this engagement, I'm not struggling with that anymore. So set personal goals. Like I gave the example to say, perhaps in the beginning, the jargon dribbles you, but it shouldn't dribble you forever, because now that you're aware that the jargon is something that you're struggling with, why don't you go out there and learn about it? You know, why would that be the thing that you get known for? That this person's been on our board for 2 years, but she doesn't understand the industry. So it's important to be learning continuously and seeking ways to improve and advance yourself before the market requires you to advance yourself. I'm pausing for questions and comments.
Look, I didn't raise my hand, sorry.
No problem, go ahead.
Okay. I think mine will be more of a question, right? I think one of the things that let me say I struggle with as a woman in corporate and also in boardrooms and whatever, it's the imposter syndromes. Yeah, I think imposter syndrome is the word. Especially where you find yourself around being the youngest Black women amongst men, Black, because now in our Black culture, there's a way that we are expected to behave as women around men, especially when you are young and those kind of things. How do you navigate? What would your advice be in navigating that? Because for me, that always being like a challenge. Tiny body, tiny voice. But I'm here, and I know that I'm here because I deserve the seat. And of course, I've worked hard to be here. I'm well aware of that, but there'll always be that. How would you, what will your advice be in terms of just navigating that fear of just being firm and speaking out without thinking, okay, fine, we are in the same table, we are here, therefore equal here, there's nobody's father here, there's nobody's uncle, we are here as colleagues and those kind of things.
Oh, thank you for bringing that one up. So I for the longest time struggled with the age one. I also struggled with people saying I'm small or young or whatever, and sometimes even when I lecture, especially postgraduate students, like, when did you go? However, the imposter sits in your head, not in the other person. So how to tackle the imposter is to fact check it. So sometimes people have imposter issues just before they go into a big meeting or before they speak, speaking and things like that. It's important to remind yourself the facts. And some people do that through affirmation. And I'm not talking about wishy-washy affirmation. It is about literally reminding yourself factually why you deserve to be. One of the ways you can do this is visit your profile, visit your resume, your CV often. Make sure that the achievements you've had, you have them in there. I find that a lot of people don't update their CVs until they're looking for a job. And so what you did at the beginning of the year, you really forgot what you achieved. And so you forgot it, and in that moment of imposter syndrome, imagine it's totally gone. So it's important to remind yourself that you deserve to be there, actually, qualification, experience, whatever, and achievements and what you bring to the table. If your audience doesn't know that and treats you with disrespect because you got a small body, small voice, young person, Black woman, whatever, you cannot do that to yourself. You know the inside story, you know the facts, and you need to always have it on top of mind so that you can assert yourself and present and position yourself. So the gap is, Elona may not know and acknowledge your profile, your experience, and value, but you should not be one of the people who does not acknowledge and position yourself. And that goes with how often do you review and actually say, oh, wow, well done. And what story are you telling yourself about yourself? Many people will do such big, great things and then minimize it because culture transition goes. Not in your career. There's not posting, but it's acknowledging facts. So one of the main ways to bust imposter syndrome is to fact check it. Am I helping you, Rishabh?
Yes, Elona, that is quite helpful, and you are very correct, because I think it's one of the things that I've been trying to remind myself, like, these people don't know that what's in my head. So, and sometimes you're just projecting, and because you're projecting your fears, you're thinking they are seeing you that way, and you are the one seeing yourself in that way. And I will also agree that affirmation, because in a day where I will really affirm myself, it becomes a very, very good day, right? And one of the things that I have been doing, like I have those kind of playlists for those days that I really need some reminder of why I'm here and what I can give. So it really just assist. So yeah, I really agree with that.
So that's very important because you need to align how you position yourself with where you want to go. So if in your current role, you're struggling with imposter syndrome, but obviously you're also planning to go to the next level, a reflection and a daily practice of growing your personal view, your view of yourself is very important because your thoughts influence your behavior. It starts off with what story are you, how are you thinking about yourself? And that is how you will behave. If you think you cannot do it, you will not do it. Even if I come and tell you can do it. So it is important to adjust the thoughts that you have towards yourself. And because your behavior will flow from your thoughts. You will find that people give feedback that you don't position yourself where you should be. And that's because your behavior has followed your thoughts. So it's important to be in control of your thoughts about yourself, because that will change how you behave. So these are the key takeaways. Embrace diversity and inclusion, and not just at surface level, which is demographics. Look at thoughts, attitudes, beliefs, and be open to what including different ways of thinking would do to whatever research is developing. Be concise and clear in your communication. Let what you say match your body language. Create allies. Connect with other people. Understand how they think, what trips them up, what do they constantly require from the presentation that's missing, and then you add it. How much breadth does it add to your breadth and depth does it add to your insight? Balance growing your leadership portfolio and have a continuous learning mindset. We added an extra one, which was an entrepreneurial mindset, which helps you to identify and seize opportunities. Most times, they want to be the customers. I see Nana has asked, does corporate politics play a role in how men and women behave in politics? Yes, definitely. And these skills actually help you navigate those politics. Those politics should not be a block that makes you stay out of the rooms, but you should master your understanding of human behavior so that you can optimize how you engage with others and how you create collaborations and connections with your peers. Nana, you answered?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Lona.
So the next slide is asking you guys for questions. So I think we're quite early. I'd like to have 2 questions before we close out. And sometimes some of us are more reflective, I think, Nabila. You are welcome to share my contact details.
Okay. Perhaps we could share it in the chat for anyone that might want to reach out to you afterwards.
Okay. There's a hand up. Please go ahead. Sorry, I'm just typing my words.
Okay. This is the last one, I promise.
You're welcome.
You mentioned that you do coaching, Elona. Do you only do entrepreneurial coaching, or do you also do individual coaching?
I do individual career and executive coaching. but I also do entrepreneurship coaching. So the two.
Okay. All right. No, that's great.
And you're asking for the presentation. Can I share it in the chat?
You actually can.
Okay, let me try. I know I'm volunteering.
Okay, if you can't, it's fine. Let me put my email address also in the chat, and then Elona, you can share it with me, or you can reach out directly to Elona.
I'm just adding another email address. Okay, it seems like it's uploading. If not, I will also, anyway, I will still share it in case somebody was not able to download. There's a hand up, please go ahead. I think it's Tuli.
Hi. Hi, Elona.
Hi.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I just want to ask a question because I've just started as a board member on an organization that historically people were only commenting on specific areas that they're responsible for. Like, for instance, the finance person will only start commenting when they're presenting financials, and same with the other role players. And I'm finding that there is that operation that is not like open across different areas. And how best do you think I can break those silos so that I can be able to contribute in other areas as well?
I think it is important to, sometimes it's better to ask questions, to ask, is there opportunity for us to work together and contribute better with all the minds, the great minds in the room? So sometimes the reason for silos is coming from fear, or how it's communicated, that maybe when I communicate to the finance person, it lands as though I'm saying you don't know your job, but yet it is actually contribution that could improve the status of whatever the finance person is presenting, and also the status of the board as a whole. So it's around cohesiveness as a board, to say, my contribution is not just to improve, it's not just to show off and say, I actually also know finance, but it's actually to improve our outlook as a board and our collaboration and cohesiveness together. So when you ask questions around, can we work differently? Can we contribute to each other and actually have a united front? It might just be that the past board was not, was not actually working in synergy. So it sounds like there might be a need to do a team cohesiveness exercise for that board, so that you're all on the same page in terms of where we're going and how we're going to get there, and we cannot get there as silos. Because when there is issues, the board is held accountable collectively and not just members.
Get you. I'll try it. We have another one coming up next week. Thanks.
Okay, all the best. Rishoketsu, is that your hand on? I don't know what I did, but now I'm just
yes. I do have my thing, my hand up. Two questions, right? That are just coming up for me in terms of, and I've just seen this in my career. It's been an observation, right? Small boards, big boards. What would your advice be when setting up a board in terms of a small board or a big board? And I'll tell you why. In my experience, I've seen like a board of 5 members being more effective than a board of 10 members, because out of that 10, 4 of them are mainly quiet half of the time. And however, then when there are 5, everyone is sort of forced to speak because all the inputs are closer. Right. So I just want to hear your take on that, on what normally your advice on your clients in terms of small or big boards. Number two, also, I'm not sure if you touched on this, if I missed it, just the importance of building allyships, especially for women, and how can one go about building allyships, or maybe get a mentor or something like that. Maybe you can just come in on that. I'm not sure if you've touched on it, if I missed it.
I did, but I can repeat it. On the
Okay.
first one, I wouldn't make it a numbers game, but I have seen people speak up in boards of 12 to 15. It is the culture in the board. So people who generally don't speak up personally would be either feeling like, even if I contribute, it's not going to have an impact, or it's not going to be considered. So what is the culture in that board, and what is the purpose of those positions? So it should not just be for the sake of my board needs to have 10 people. They need to have purpose and impact. So an impactful board where roles are clear. I've been in a small board that was not very effective, very long meetings, and meetings that go out of scope. So it's in my mind, not really the numbers, but the culture of the board and the direction of the chairperson or all the members, really to say how serious and attached to the outputs and the outcomes of this board are we. Then the second one on allyship and mentorship, it is super important. I see a chat. It is super important to build allyship, but don't do it in the meetings. Try and get to know people outside of the meetings in social settings. And sometimes some people will be like, why you want to meet me? But it's just really be clear about that. I just want to get to know the people that I'm working with, just so I can understand better. So when I spoke about that, it is important to have inclusive decision-making. Be known that you are able to take feedback from other people and incorporate it. You are able to go and check in with your fellow board member because you value their opinion. So it's basically building a relationship. Build a relationship with the people that you work with, so that you can understand them. That sometimes, oh, is this why this person gives me a problem? It's because I'm not very detailed in my slides or in my presentation, and they like the detail, for example. Then provide the detail. Or a certain person feels that I don't take into account the people factor, and that's very important for them. And when I don't do that, then I lose them. So you get to understand what is it that other people need, and in addressing their needs as you advance yours, then you start to build sustainable relationships in your board. Are you answered?
I am. Thank you so much, Elona, for your time. Appreciate it.
No problem. And truly all the best for your upcoming board meeting. And since you're new, just observe the people, even as you talk and engage, observe what's happening with this one, what makes this person, what sets this person on fire, and what makes them switch off. I've observed a couple of people. I remember sitting in on certain boards, you find that the finance person will switch off until you start to speak about costs. And sometimes they're not aware. Sometimes they're not aware that all that other stuff that they consider to be fluff. Remember, I said your thoughts influence your behavior. So that person in their private space considers anything else to be fluff. And so it shows through in their behavior that, I'm not going to listen to this until they speak to things that impact budget. Sometimes it is impactful, but they're not aware that they're actually exhibiting that behavior. I think this is the point where I hand over to Nabila.
Thank you so much. Elona, we're so grateful that you joined us today. And I think this was a very nice interactive session, and I'm sure everyone really enjoyed it. So thank you so much. If you guys would like to reach out to Elona or have any questions for her after the session, please feel free to reach out. If you guys want to rewatch this webinar or watch the other masterclasses that we had earlier today, please feel free to click on the link for our Linktree page. I've added it to the chat. So without wasting any more time, I think everyone had a superb time here. I'm just going to thank you, and thank you everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, ladies. Goodbye.
Life is a journey. We are all traveling. Wonder where I have been traveling. Life is a journey. We are still traveling. We are all still traveling. Anango mayorira nato terera. Buda izirango menato tembera. Ubenyu unukudu kumwana we. Recollect my friend. Anango mayorira nato terera. Anango mayorira nato terera. Buda izirango menato tembera. Ubenyu unukudu kumwana we. Recollect my friend. Life is a journey. Yeah, we are all traveling. Here I have been traveling. Oh, life is a journey. Now we are still traveling. And I go, yeah, we're all still traveling. And I'm going to not so terrible. But I did, I'm going to not so temporary. Then you would put it on one hour, break a leg, my friend. And I'm going to not so terrible. And I'm going to not so terrible. But I did, I'm going to not so temporary. When you would put it on 1 hour, break a leg, my friend. And I'm going to not so terrible. I have been traveling. We're still all traveling. Yes, I have been traveling.